here we are with Antoine Chavron of UNCx. Antoine, it's so great to be interviewing you. Thank you so much for coming on board.
Well, thank you for having me, Camila and Defiant. That's a real pleasure to be here.
Of course. Antoine, I want to get to know more about you and UNCx. I understand UNCx, formerly known as Unicrypt, is this all-in-one platform for DeFi applications. So if you can just, go from the beginning into how this project started, when was it founded, and what the idea behind it initially was.
All right. That's a lot to tackle in just one question, but I'll try to do my best. So first, what do we do at UNCx, right? So as you mentioned, we're a services provider. I would even say that we're a decentralized services provider. All the tech that we offer to our customers are smart contract-based services. And we serve businesses, right? So this is a B2B approach as far as the customers that we have. Even though we have end users leveraging the platforms and the information that we display, our customers are companies or recently launched tokens, or existing companies that are launching their own tokens. And this is due to the nature of the services. So the first service we have is allowing you to create your own currency, right? This is what we call a token minter. Then we have a product that allows token developers and investors to have a vesting schedule. So this is like vesting as a service. And then we also have liquidity lockers, which also turned to be the first ever product we came up with. It's like allowing people to lock their Uniswap liquidity provider position. When I say people, I always mean token developers or token owners. Then we also have what we call initial liquidity offering platform. So this is kind of a slang for a crowdfunding platform, right? This in a decentralized way, you can raise capital through the platform. And we also have farming and staking as a service. So these are services for slightly more advanced communities and projects, which want to either get their users to stake their asset for up to 10 rewards at the same time. It depends on each, of course, tokenomics plan, or people that are willing to stimulate the liquidity on their purse. So they're going to use the farms as a service. So this is for the services side. And a bit of history maybe about the project, which we don't really call a project anymore. We like to call ourselves a company, right? Because we're an established business in Europe. Even though in crypto, it's like we always refer to companies as projects, but we also like to call ourselves a company. And the project phase was actually the first phase that we ran through, which I would say was the first year after we basically started. Because we started in the mid 2020, so we started in June 2020. And the way we started was kind of very Web3. So basically, it's just myself and my business partner. We met on Telegram through anonymous chats, right? And we just bootstrapped the project, at this stage, a project together for, almost a year, completely anonymously, right? So we were serving customers with our first service, which were the liquidity lockers on top of Uniswap version 2. Then we, of course, iterated on different chains, on different protocols, but we're coming from Uniswap v2. And this was 2020, yeah. So this is like 3 years and a half-ish. Like by the end of the year, we're going to be 3 years and a half on the market. And basically, my partner was coming from it was also turned out to be based in Europe because I'm myself based in Europe. And by then we didn't know. So we were sometimes guessing each other's timeline and everything, time zone. And working at crazy hours because we both had also a job on the side. So it was kind of a very exciting phase because, it certainly required nights and weekends of work all the time. We were working nonstop. But at the same time, due to the nature of the relationship that we had together, because we were both anonymous and we met on the Telegram, you just want to give your best because that's what you believe in, right? We were both into the security aspect of tokens, right? Because I think if you experience DeFi for, let's say, enough amount of time, you probably are aware of sometimes bad practices or malicious actors or the risk of centralization. So you'd rather leverage decentralized protocols instead of trusting third parties. Of course, the examples are numerous, right? We can think of exchanges like, of course, FTX. We can think of staking platforms like Celsius, this kind of bad examples, right? Or examples of learnings that make you think twice before not using the chain instead of trusting someone. We always ran by the approach of trusting the chain over anyone if possible. And this is how we came up basically with all these services that we're, leveraging today and that our customers are leveraging today. Yeah. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, it was perfect. Okay, so you and your co-founder met through Telegram. You were both anon, experimenting in DeFi, and I guess you mentioned the first use case that you started building was these liquidity lockers on Uniswap. So, what was the market need that you saw there that it made you want to build this product?
That's a great question, right? Thank you. So the first use case that we witnessed is because it was DeFi summer 2020, right? So every there was a lot of interest over Uniswap v2. It was kind of a rush in Uniswap v2, right? And so you had many pairs that were created on the decentralized exchange, and no real knowledge from the communities, right? So what ended up happening a lot of times were people were doing what's commonly known as a rug pull. So it's like, imagine that you create a Defiant token, right? So you pair it with Ethereum, people trade. So at the first, usually people buy your asset rather than selling it because they don't have it at the first place. And once they bought your asset, the liquidity pool grows, the amount of Ethereum grows into the pool. And at some point, some malicious actors, or in this case, developers, would remove the liquidity. And people that bought into the tokens are naturally left with a worthless asset because it cannot be traded anymore. Just because of the nature of the pool being empty, right? If the liquidity was removed. So the first ever use case we witnessed was like, how can we, one way or another, of course, you cannot protect people from all the angles at once. But let's say that this was an angle where we found a match in terms of protection. So we just invited some projects to commit in a way to the liquidity that they would provide on Uniswap v2, instead of saying, guys, we believe in this project and we're never going to remove the liquidity. That's one thing. You can put it in your white paper, but that's mostly, trust over no commit, right? Whereas if you lock the liquidity for, let's say, a year or 2 years, or let's say 10 years, anyway, that shows commitment, right? So that was the first use case that we identified. And it was not only for the sake of serving customers, but also for serving people that were part of our own community at the first place. Because the way we launched because we have a digital token, right? We have a utility token on the market called UNCx, as per the name of the company. And so when we launched this token, we had a $50 liquidity pool and a lot of tokens on the other side, obviously. And then people started to see interest over our currency. And naturally we saw a lot of buy orders. And then at some point people started to question like, hey, what happens if, you guys decide to abandon, because at this stage we were still anonymous, as a reminder. What happened if you guys simply disappear with the funds, right, that are in the pool? And so that's where also for us, before even serving customers, we needed something to show people that we were acting because we're like passionate, right? Passionate about security, passionate about these kind of services. So first of all, we also needed this service for ourselves, and that's how we identified a gap in the market itself. And then we allowed basically our customers to use the service. And you can argue this is the same basically for token vesting, because token vesting was naturally something that came next, right? It doesn't really matter if you lock your liquidity, for example, if you still hold 95% of the supply. Because if you hold 95% of the supply of your own digital utility token, and there is 5% in the pool, whether you lock in the pool or not, you can still basically sell all your tokens as a team or as a founder or as an advisor or whatever. The point remains that if there are no vesting schedules, that is another angle of lack of commitment from a tokenomics and from a blockchain perspective. So this is what we came up with at the first place.
Got it. Okay, so you came up with these liquidity lockers that prevent teams from doing a rug pull and removing liquidity from Uniswap v2. Then you created vesting schedules for tokens, and I assume these are all smart contracts that you deployed on the Ethereum network.
We're actually started on Ethereum. That is correct. Because back then there was mostly Uniswap, and then during 2021 there were many different EVM compatible chains that were launched, or layer 2, layer 1s, you name it. But so we started from Ethereum, and then we went first to XDAI, which is now Genesis chain. Then we went to Binance Smart Chain, which is now BNB chain. Then we did AVAX, and we did also Polygon. And then we kind of stopped running around all the layer 1 and layer 2s because, at the first place, we wanted to see interest because at the end of the day, we also have infrastructure. We have our own servers, so we need to index all this data, making sure that anything that we offer to our customers is matching our standards in terms of speed, in terms of user experience. So instead of rushing in all the chains, we made sure that there is kind of a purpose and demand, organic demand on the chain before moving forward with integrating all the EVM compatible chains at the same time.
Yeah, makes sense. And then so if these are smart contracts deployed on Ethereum and other EVM compatible chains, then what's the business model for you? Can anyone just access these smart contracts? Do they have to pay a fee? Do they have to buy UNCx token? How does that work?
So the business model we have, it's also, thank you, because it's also a great question. That's also kind of illustrating why we never had to raise any capital as a company. We literally started from zero and be profitable from day one, in a way, since day one. Because each time you're as a user going to use one of the services, you're going to be charged a fee, and the fee model depends on the service that you're going to use. So you can either interact with the contract, right, directly on the blockchain, but this is, let's say, a few % of the users. Usually people prefer to interact over a user interface, over a UI, and look from your app instead of directly interacting with the contract, or through automations. We also have a bunch of customers that interact through automations, but let's ignore these ones and focus on the main usage of the platform. So you're going to connect to the UI, select the service that you want to use, whether it's a creation of a token, whether if it's a liquidity lock, or both, for example. And then each token has a different fee model. Without going too much into the details, for some of the services, we have what we call a flat fee, which is charged in the gas token, depending on the chain. So, for example, on Ethereum, it's going to be a flat amount of Ethereum that is charged to the user, on top of the gas that is required, obviously, to interact with the smart contract. And for some of the services, there is also a token fee. So, for example, let's focus again on the Defiant token. If you guys would, for example, lock or vest your Defiant token on the platform, you would be charged in Defiant tokens. So we charge a portion of the tokens that you're actually locking, or in this case, vesting on the platform. So it's kind of convenient for our customers, especially the ones that are getting started, that are very low on market caps, because at the end of the day, for them, if they just created the token, or if they just recently launched their utility token, it kind of is a low barrier of entry to access the service, because at the end of the day, this is a money they created, or this is an asset that they created, so they can afford to pay this fee. And sometimes some of these users, they're not comfortable paying their fees in tokens. So we also have alternative methods, usually charged either in stable coins, where we can basically give a full access to all the services that we have with a one-time payment. This is something we can do thanks to the smart contract, admin functions. And when I say admin functions, I just want to emphasize that the administrative functions of the contracts that we have as services are purely for settings purposes. That means that you cannot unlock a token, you cannot have a super user to overwrite a rule that was defined by our customer in the first place. We're fully decentralized in the way that there is no proxy contract, so we don't have any say on how is it going to be on how it has been or how it will be configured by the customers. And this is by design, and also for security purposes, because at the end of the day, we're making sure that the customers that interact with the platform not only have the best experience, but it's also a hack-proof platform, right? We've never been suffering any hacks, which I think is a good thing, right? That's probably also because we spend a lot of time and effort into making sure that the contracts that we have and that are live on the blockchains are not only security assessed or audited once, but rather 2, 3, 4 times. It depends on the service, and we also do updates of the existing audits to make sure that the security basically of the contracts is extremely important for us as a decentralized services provider around vesting and locking and these kind of problematics, obviously. But yeah, sorry, it wasn't the question. But for the fee model, we have hybrid models, either in tokens, flat fees. It's of course very important to remind our users. I mean, of course, our users know, right? But to remind people that security assessments, known as audits, are extremely important for any DeFi protocol you're willing to interact with, right? So just make sure that you always check on the security assessments or over multiple security assessments, because this is unfortunately what sometimes people forget about, and that's actually key, right, in DeFi especially.
For sure. Okay, so you have these groups of smart contracts that are deployed on Ethereum and other EVM compatible chains, and then you have a front end to interact with all these different DeFi services, and you charge a fee that has different structures to do this, and you were saying that these smart contracts are immutable, like you don't have any overriding power over them, like you cannot control what goes, like the tokens that go in and out of these smart contracts. You can't make unilateral
Absolutely.
changes. Okay, but then like if you are doing all these security audits, what happens if at one point there is some bug or flaw that is discovered? How are you able to fix it, or would you have to like redeploy an entirely new smart contract?
So if it was to, so first of all, it never happened, right? So this is for one. For two, if you're right, any modification or because let's say you mentioned the bug, but I can also see that as for example, an idea of improvement or additional feature that we may add to the existing roster of contracts. Then you're also right. This is maybe the other side of the coin, is that because of the immutability that we have, we could not implement new features straight. So when this problematics arise, because for example, sometimes the AMMs are going to migrate. For example, we have a Uniswap v2 that became Uniswap v3. Uniswap v3 is going to migrate to Uniswap v4. So we have to deploy new contracts when this occurs. This is correct. And then we can also implement migration. So we have clips from migrations that are a possibility. Of course, this is decided by each and every customer and each and every user of the protocol. We can put available like a migration contract if they want to benefit from the new features. For example, we had this example of on top of our Uniswap v3 lockers. So we had a version of the lockers that was deployed on Ethereum chain. And we recently started to work with a lossless protocol. Maybe you're familiar with this company, but they provide an additional layer of security, right, for smart contracts. So we implemented lossless modules in the smart contracts, and then we deployed a new smart contract with lossless implementation, and we allowed a migration with the exact same settings, parameters, and everything that was configured at the first place on the first lock was untouched by design, once again, because we don't alterate, or we don't allow our customers anyway to alterate what the settings were, on the chain at the first place, but they could migrate from one contract to another. Yeah, this is probably one of the more one of the most advanced features of these contracts. Yeah, but this is something we have put available because at the end of the day, we both know that, for example, the Uniswap v1 was going to be changed for V2, then V2 gonna evolve into V3. Now we're preparing the landing on V4 for next year. So it's kind of required not to have our users completely stuck, and offer them the options whenever it's possible. Obviously, if this is impossible, sometimes it has occurred for customers' requests like, oh yeah, we would like to change this and that, or when they have token swaps, we still have limits to the product. Again, this is by design and to match the standards of security that we have on the platform and on the smart contracts. But yeah, this is something we also take into account. And as for the bugs and the hacks, to give you, for example, an idea of how we are convinced that from a blockchain perspective, our contracts are solid. Last bull market, so I think in the middle of 2021, we were holding $650 or $700 million worth of liquidity provider tokens, which were never stolen by anyone. So I assume that if there were $700 million of tokens worth being stolen, that would have happened before. Yeah.
You were holding $700 million in 2021?
In the smart contracts, yeah. When I say we, I mean our smart
The
contracts,
smart contracts,
not us
yeah,
as a company, because we're obviously non-custodial.
Yeah, but that's a huge amount. Congrats.
Well, it's a bull market figure, right? It's not so much something we. I guess maybe it kind of gives me like a room for thoughts here, right? Because I feel like the narratives for each cycles of the market is kind of different, right? So for example, if we take the first cycle that was 2017, it was more about how much you're able to raise. Like people were kind of ranking protocols and companies like, oh yeah, this project raised whatever exactly by ICO rankings. Then you had the second one that was like with DeFi Summer 2020. So it was like you said about TVL, like, oh, you guys had 500 million or 1 billion or whatever it is. As far as I know, these stats only matter when these are liquid tokens. So for example, Ethereum, Bitcoin, potentially stable coins. But FTT, for example, should not have been taken into account, if that makes sense. Wink, wink. But then we figure that the next bull run, this is our take on the next bull run, is not so much about the TVL that you have, but it's more about the usage of the contracts. Like it's the usage, and I think Uniswap would agree to that. It's also the revenue generation that you are doing as a company. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I think it was last week that Uniswap enabled the fees on trading for certain pairs
on the front end,
right? And to me, this confirms that we're going into this narrative of it's not so much about how people are willing to commit, how much you're able to raise, but it's like, are you sustainable as a crypto company? Because this is a question that is not being answered a lot at this at the current phase of the industry, and I think this is very important to enlighten the fact that if Uniswap starts to do it, for example, that means they also figured that that's also how you measure the impact of a company in the Web3 industry. It's like, are you able to make a sustainable business model instead of using your token as a way to fund the project by itself without any real utility or real let's say revenue generation model, if that makes sense, outside of the token itself.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, and I think the TVL narrative was a bit misleading and also led to some really bad practices. Just a lot of yield farming was just liquidity being incentivized by unsustainable token rewards and so on. So I think you're right. Kind of hopefully the next cycle will be about much more sustainable and real use cases, like users actually wanting to pay for services, wanting to stick to a protocol and not just jumping on like from farm to farm. So yeah, I think totally agree. And so from that standpoint, how much revenue are you making, or like what kind of revenue metrics can you provide?
I think I'll answer this question in a simple way. Usually when someone tells me that their protocol is lucrative or sustainable or revenue making or and it's smart contract based, I don't give much credit of a said answer, right? Like you can tell me anything. Like I'm not gonna open your balance sheet, for example. But so I guess if people are interested to know how UNCx is sustainable and the revenue we generate, so you have two ways of doing it. The first way is to do it directly raw on the chain, right? Which is the let's say the advanced way of doing it. You can always figure this kind of data if you're savvy with Etherscan and you can figure it out. Or because as a decentralized provider, we're obviously transparent about our business model and the way we operate and the way we generate money, right? As a company, you can also find these statistics live. Well, actually, I think it's like 24 hours delay, but whatever. It's like, let's consider it live on platforms like a DeFi Llama. So on DeFi Llama, you have the TVL tracking, which is one part of the app that is great. We actually love DeFi Llama, by the way. If someone from DeFi Llama sees this video, thanks guys for what you're doing, because this is amazing. But they also have a part where they track the business model and if a protocol is generating revenue. So you can find UNCx network fees and revenue generation directly on the page of DeFi Llama, because it's tracked on 24 hours basis, as I was saying. So we have the data, but it's just that obviously we're not proactively communicating about it. because we're focusing on making sure that people see values in our services rather than bragging about our figures, if that makes sense. That's our approach, right? We're like very tech focused and not so much into showing off if we're a sustainable company. Like, I mean, if people want to connect the dots, there is absolutely no issue. We can confirm the data. They can check on DeFi Llama. We proactively submit in the way we were calculating fees. So it's actually, the data is there. It's just people can check on it. But it's true that people can also figure that this is how can I say that? This is not something that is hard to find for any of the DeFi protocols out there at the end of the day.
Okay, so it shows here that that you have right now you have 240 million of TVL in your smart contracts, and you are making, I think this is daily revenue of between 20K to 50K. Does that sound right?
Yes. This is. I mean, if you're on DeFi Llama, the obvious answer is yes. It's right because it comes from the blockchain.
Just making sure I'm like reading it correctly, that it's daily revenue and that it because sometimes like these things can be configured kind of in not the right way, or like it's not taking data the right way. So it's good to have you to like reconfirm these numbers.
For sure, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But I think you have on DeFi Llama, you have for each protocol. Actually, this is more of a let's go into the DeFi Llama education moment. But on DeFi Llama, for each protocol that you can see, for example, the protocol fees or the protocol revenue generation, you can also check on the code and the methodology that is adopted. So, for example, if you look at the methodology that is adopted for our protocol, you can see what currency they take into account, how many times a day they're going to snapshot it to make sure that, it's not double counted and so on. So this is yeah, in the case of DeFi Llama, this is accurate. And I think you can also find the data consolidated by week, by month. It's like, pretty transparent about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, this is great. Like you're making really, sustainable amounts of revenue daily. And about the token, how is it, like, what role does it have in your ecosystem?
So we historically had more roles than we have today because we kind of changed the utilities of the utility token over time, just to make sure that the utilities are kind of adapted to the marketplace, if that makes sense. So we have a crowdfunding platform. So on the crowdfunding platform, you have certain sales or certain crowdfunding rounds, if I may say, that might require users to be part of our ecosystem. So when I say part of our ecosystem, I'm referring to end users being, holding, or staking our utility token. So this is one thing. Then for the B2B side of things, we also have some of the services, especially the liquidity lockers, even though it's not used much, to be quite frank with you, but this is a possibility to reduce the fees that you pay to burn some of our tokens instead of paying the fees that are natively charged to our customers. Then you also have the way to become a referral. So if you're, for example, Camila, you love UNCx, you're interested to have people locking their liquidity or locking their tokens, you can get yourself your hands on UNCx, and as you hold UNCx, you can become a referrer. So you would, for example, lock or incentivize your favorite company or favorite project to lock their liquidity provider position, for example, and you will get a portion of the fees that is charged to the end customer. So this is a way of utilizing your tokens as a let's say ambassador or referrer in that case. And I think we actually mentioned that in the last article that was posted on Defiant website, if I'm not mistaken. And then there is also another utility that is the account management on the platform. And we also, for some of the services that we have, we accrued the fees generated in a distinct wallet. And this wallet is used to buy back the utility token of our own. And then we distribute these buybacks among the different stakers of our own community. So there is a kind of a cycle that is put in place. And yeah, I would argue that users are happy because we have a sustainable APY, and we have people just keep their assets staked. So I would assume from the chain perspective that they're happy about it. And like you said about yield farming and crazy APYs of 200%, whatever it was per year or per month, we obviously have numbers that make sense for these kind of practices. So this is also something that you can do and leverage with your UNCx tokens. Yeah.
Awesome. And then for like your longer term vision, where would you want UNCx to be, say, in the next bull run and beyond, like 5-10 years from now? Like, yeah, what's your bigger plan?
I think the first thing, which is a major achievement in our humble opinion, that we would like to achieve is to get people to understand more about what's on-chain investing and what's on-chain liquidity locking, for example, because these aspects are probably what cost a lot of users their wealth or their savings in the last run. For example, we witnessed it from the first row, seeing all these people that didn't pay attention to how things work on the blockchain, and that believe white papers over believing a blockchain when we actually have a blockchain to allow basically a level of transparency that we never had before. So it's not only about getting people educated, but it's also to getting these practices adopted, like removing the third parties as much as possible. Just like, for example, custodial vesting or self-custody for people that launch companies and projects should not be a hoop to jump through anymore, because we have non-custodial vesting solutions that are super precise, that are independent, that are governed by the chain. So all in all, it serves people that have good ideas and I want to create good ecosystems. So it's more about the mass adoption of these kind of services, and therefore us as a company, we would like to stand as an it's not exactly an authority, but more as a good example of or as a mentor to show people how to leverage these kind of services, even though they're not ours. I don't mind. There are space for many providers, and at the end of the day, what I care about is people vesting their tokens or people locking their liquidity to make sure that basically traders and end users can interact in the best way possible and have the best experience when it comes to either trading or utilizing the different tokens they're interested into. Because at the end of the day, if we want this space to reach like 100 million active wallets per day or just 10 million active wallets per day, we might as well tackle these infrastructure, not exactly on the chain side, but more on the DeFi side. We need to address these questions and we need to address them efficiently, and we have now the tools to do it. So I would rather focus on making sure that people know about these tools, right? This is also why we're having this interview today. This is why we're also accelerating on being present in conferences, on-site events, and this kind of activities to get people to know about these kind of services, right? And of course, then we want to make sure that we continue providing services to our users. Like when I say to our users, I mean again the token developers, because each hoop that we have to jump through as a company from a token perspective, we make sure to put it available as a service for others. But we, as a token, do not have knowledge of all the issues or all the gaps that have to be filled. So it's important that, as far as we're concerned, we want to make sure that we research what issues and what problems these companies run into, so that we can make sure to not only fix it for them, but making it available as a service so that it becomes standards. So if I were to summarize, basically what I've been saying for the last 3 minutes, it's making sure that we can help defining standards and shaping them, because these standards, in our opinion, that we want to define and want to be part of, are meant to make the space safer, with a better experience, and at the end of the day, foster the adoption and participate into the wider adoption of not even crypto, but just blockchain as a whole. Because of course, you can adapt it to a million other things than just currencies, right? Even though we're focusing on tokens today, that doesn't mean the door is closed to focus on also other use cases of the blockchain that may have certain let's say similarities with the challenges that we tackle today.
No, super interesting to learn more about what you're doing. I think it's awesome that you're providing these fully decentralized services for builders in DeFi, that you're doing it in a way that is careful, that is taking into account the security of user funds, to make sure that it's in a non-custodial way, that it's in immutable contracts. I mean, I think that's the exact direction that the space should be taking. And yeah, I think it's hopefully, you know, your this kind of new communication that you're doing, and hopefully us at the Defiant, we can help spread the word that these services are available, because I think it's important for users to start demanding these things from the tokens that they're buying and the dApps. Sorry, and the dApps that you're that
No worries.
my baby, and the dApps that they're using. So again, like. Congrats on all your success so far, and really a pleasure to have you on the Defiant, and thanks for your support to us as well.
Well, it was a real pleasure to be here as well, and yeah, I think like for us the most important thing is that people get to be aware of these kind of services, and for us as a company, it's actually it's gonna be weird to say, but since we have the bear market due to all these centralized platforms, we as a company have entered the bull market because people can caught up, you know, more on the due diligence, on understanding the blockchain. So in a way, it's one of the benefits of the bear market as a whole is that people, you know, cannot dig. The people that leave, that don't leave the space, right? The one that stay, they're actually focusing and, you know, digging more into the ecosystem and how it works, you know, under the hood. So yeah, that was a great thank you for the interview again. Had a great time, and yeah, thank you for what you guys are doing at the Defiant. Of course, we're readers, and yeah, it's also a pleasure to see what you guys are doing. So yeah, I guess we're aiming in the right direction, and it seems that your website and our website has the same color as well. So that's pretty nice. Green for the win.
Yes, green for the win. Awesome. Thank you so much, Antoine. Pleasure chatting again.
Thank you, Camila. Bye bye.